Welcome. Thanks for coming. I love it when people come in person. Ever since we started the videotaping, the numbers have dwindled, right? So we appreciate it. My name is Barbara Fondren. I'm the director of the school. These are my lovely support people that will be joining us for our conversation tonight. And so I like to usually start with letting the staff that's here introduce themselves and then kind of seeing who we have here by age level. So,
hello, I'm Hannigan Roseberry, and I'm in the Creativity Studio at the farthest end here of the building, and I'm the coordinator of Courage.
I am Danielle Manso, and I'm also in the Creativity Studio with Hannigan, and I'm the Teen Studio Support Coordinator.
I'm Kelly Cruz, Administrative Services and Finance.
I'm Freda. I work for the Administrative Services, for Student Services, and we work in the same office along with us.
Hi, I'm Melissa Wiesinger. I'm the Expansion Development Coordinator.
Oh, okay. I'm Cece Schroeder, and I teach in Turquoise, which is a 9 to 12 student.
I'm Heather Brown, and I teach in Sapphire, that's also a 9 to 12 student.
Tracy Hickman Yates, and I'm in Sycamore in the Woods.
yeah.
Hi, I'm Melanie Smith. I'm a co-teacher in Emphas Studio, which is a 9 to 12 studio.
Denisha?
Oh, hi. I'm Tanisha Chapman. I am a developmental specialist for early education.
Kim?
Hang on, I'm finding my way.
Uh-huh.
I'm Kim. You can find me at the Curve Desk.
I'm Erica. I am a co-teacher in Ocean, which is a 6 to 9 studio.
I'm Cynthia Ayers. I'm a developmental specialist for the student studios.
So have children there in the 3 to 6 program. 6 to 9, 9 to 12, 12 to 14, 14 to 18. Okay, so we've got a nice mix of people tonight. So actually, when we converted to a charter school in 2002, we started creating a state of the school, kind of going off of the State of the Union address, and so trying to let families know where we are. It was always important to me as a school leader with staff to be very open and collaborative and transparent, and so I believe in that same way with this. To the point that sometimes the people that help me put these things together, like, really, do we have to say that? And like, hey, we're saying that, like it is who we are. And so, our role is to kind of share with you things that we're doing well, things that are our goals, ask questions. There'll be certain parts of this, there'll be a whole lot of graphs and numbers up here. Some of you will be like, oh yeah, and others will be like, oh my gosh, I have no idea where you're going with that. So you won't offend us, feel free to interrupt us. We do have a lot of information we like to share, so it's kind of a talking thing a lot. So just raise your hand up or wave at us so that we know you have some things that you want to share. Okay? All right, Kelly's going to be our clicker tonight. So we already talked about the introductions. We have some members of the PIP Council here tonight. They're going to be talking just a little bit later. So I like to always start with, kind of the bigger. You can keep going, Kelly. Who we are. There's the Cupola staff. You can keep going. And the early ed and elementary staff. Who's the tallest? I'm just kidding. And then the teen staff. So, very cool. One of the things, next year will be our 20th year as a school, which is very, very cool. Absolutely. And so we kind of started this process so the end of each school year, as a staff, we get together and talk about how do we do, what are things we want to do better, what are some goals that we have for next year. Sometimes goals to nauseam because we do that a lot, so we always have to kind of regroup. One of our goals for the last couple of years is the work smarter process. When you've been to school for 20 years, sometimes you start doing a whole lot of things and it's hard to do all of those things consistently. And sometimes they don't have purpose anymore, and so trying to rethink that. As we started reflecting at the end of last year, some of us went to a... Wow, that is cool. That's very loud. Some of us went to a conference, a Montessori conference in Sarasota, and we saw this gentleman named Sam Chaltain. And so we really enjoyed getting to hear him talk, and he's very much a change agent, kind of one of those unique personalities that helps you kind of find the best of yourself and the best of your vision. And so it started this, at the same time, the Lilly Foundation came up with a grant to try to help schools do mental health and emotional support in a better way. And so we started to think about, what do we want to do with this grant? What needs do we want to try to focus on and start planning for implementation? And so we married those two worlds. And who was here? Who came to see Sam Chaltain? Anybody here? So a few of you were here to saw Sam Chaltain this past fall, October, I think. And it was very, invigorating. He came into this full community talk, and then he spent a whole day with us. And we really enjoyed it. We thought he was, he really got us excited. And our goal was to try to look at, I wrote our original mission statement, in the basement of my house, and presented it later to our PIP council and the vision to our board. And that's how the whole school got started. And so after almost 20 years, you start to think, okay, what does that still mean? We did that kind of when we became a charter school too, but not in a real intensive, intentional way. So we wanted to start that conversation. So he helped us to do that. And so one of the things that we started working on is, what do we want for that kiddo that graduates from here? And what are the pieces that we put in along the way? And do those still match what we say is in our vision, or how do we want to change that? So we have this human spirit campaign that we're working on right now, and we'll be presenting it to you too. We're getting closer, but we really want to present it back to the families and the teens and kind of get your feedback from it, but really trying to think about, and so we're still working with the names. One of the potential names is redefining the human spirit, or enhancing the human spirit. I can't remember what other, nurturing the human spirit. And so what are those things that are part of that? What are the more details of that? And so from that, to try to re-explore what our mission is as a school. So that's been really cool. We've been working on that. We also started a goal, about 10 years ago, to have more teachers at the school that had Montessori credentials. Not all of you know that process. When we started the school, I went to Cincinnati for 2 days a week, and for 2 years to get my master's and my Montessori early childhood credential. It was a big investment. Glenn and I, even 25 years ago, spent $10,000 on that program, and a whole lot of time. We'd bring up our children that were infants and a little bit older than that, and did this program. And it was really hard to do Montessori credentialing with staff because you have to travel. So we started this mission to how can we help staff to get trained without being away from their family. And so last year, we got that to full fruition when we had a training program come to our school to do the residential part of the program. So now some certification programs will come and travel, and so part of it's in-house. Teresa works for this company, and part of it is online. And so we started early childhood and elementary certifications last year, and this year, so exciting this summer, we'll start secondary certifications. And so we'll have 8 staff members that will be going through secondary certification, which is a really big deal. We've looked at a lot of different programs for Montessori certification at secondary level. My own opinion of that is I don't want people to just get a piece of paper. I want it to help them do better what they do. And so we had last January, Paul Epstein, who is the leader of this secondary Montessori certification, come to our school and talk to our staff. And we kind of helped him make that plan for what that certification was going to look like. And so that was really cool. So now we feel like it's a real congruent plan for us as well. A year and a half, 2.5 years ago, 2+ years ago, we met as a staff and did a comprehensive survey of what we wanted as a staff. What needs did we have? What goals did we have? There was 3 things that came out of that survey that were very clear. One was we need more space and be able to use the space we have in the way it was intended. Right now the MAC is used about 12 to 15 weeks out of the year for other activities besides fitness and wellness. And so we wanted to get that back. So that's where the CASA Day Curiosity movement came from. Increased teacher salaries, so that's been on the goal for a while. A year and a half ago, you'll hear about this a little bit later, we refinanced our loan, spread those payments out a little bit longer, reduced the rate, and so we had more capital on hand to do some of those things instead of waiting till the building was paid off. And then have more additional support staff. So we've increased, 300% our support staff in the building over the past 5 years, which has been really powerful, including support staff like Hannigan and Danielle, as well as support staff like Quincy and Denisha. So really trying to allow other people to help with the teachers with their roles. At User Space, we have Smarter, so we kind of talked about that. Yeah.
On the Montessori credentialing,
Yeah.
those certifications, are they state recognized?
Well, that's an interesting question because it just became state recognized about 2 weeks ago. And it doesn't really affect our school in a global way because we've been using the charter school license, but now a teacher that has a bachelor's degree and has a Montessori credential without having a teacher education degree can take that Montessori credential and get their teacher license from that. So then they can work at any school in the state of Indiana under that license. So it's very cool. Finally, our staff can go back and add it as an endorsement if they want to. It costs money for them to do that, so they'll decide if that's important or not. We already have a way that we pay staff more if they have that, whether it's allocated by the state or not.
So just to clarify, make sure I understand what
Yeah.
you're saying. So this is an alternative pathway for an educator to become a licensed teacher in any school in Indiana.
That's right.
So right now I know there's a problem with a bunch of teachers who can't pass this standardized test.
Still have to pass the test.
Okay, so that goes with that.
Yeah. It's still going to be a problem. And, to be honest with you, most of our staff that have taken the past couple of years have had no problem with it, but they did do some numbering of some of the pass rates and so forth. I think that helped some. But, each one of them will say it's stuff that they'll never use again. It's kind of a drill and skill process. Thanks for asking. This could be a topic all by itself. So I won't get into all the process of what's happening with the state right now with the diploma changes. I think it's exciting in a lot of ways. Hannigan and Danielle and Valerie and I meet almost every Friday, and this has been a big topic of our conversation because of what's going to happen with the waiver process if a teen doesn't pass the graduation exam. What are some other ways that they can get a diploma that are outside of more alternative paths? So anyway, it's still being developed. It kind of passed in December, but it's very generic information, so there's still a lot we have to flush out over the next 12 months. It won't go into effect until 2019. We're in year 2 of our 5-year renewal from Ball State, which is really exciting, meaning that I don't have to do a whole lot of work right now, and these guys don't either, which is helpful. So we've got a time to do that. It's a really big process to go through the renewal process, and it changes every few years when you have to do it. So that's exciting. So we'll have our 18-19 school lottery this coming Monday at 5 o'clock, which will take place in the Distance Learning Lab. We'll have about 115 people going for the spots that we have available. We only have, I think, 2 spots throughout everything from first level up. So that's what we'll fill, and then once we have enrollment, there'll probably be some more spots that open up, and we'll be able to go for the wait list on that. We carry about 100 families on the wait list throughout the year. Community outreach, so I tell you, people would say to me, well, once you've been doing this for a while, everything gets easy. You should do the same thing every year. That has never happened before in the history of this school's lifetime. It seems like each time that we get to a new thing, we start to create new things. And so we've got a lot of different goals that we're trying to meet. One of the roles that Hannigan has, Coordinator of Courage, is to try to support more of the mental health support for our children and teens. And so the Lilly grant that I mentioned has an implementation grant that we'll be writing this year. I think 30% got the grant last year. So it's a very competitive grant. We know that we may not get it. We hope that even once we write it, we'll find other ways to get the money we want to do the things we want to do. But just to give you a little tidbit, one of the things that we're looking at doing, where the nursery is up on the hill, there's 2 garages below the nursery, one of them making into a courage cabin, so we can have some mental health therapists come on campus to do support for children and teens. It would be paid for and worked out by the families through insurance or so forth, but some of the needs that we have in our culture, our community right now is there's not enough therapists, and there's huge waiting lists. And we also, and once they can get in, they usually have to come during the day because families can't get off work to take their children. So trying to find ways to support that. So we're real excited about that, as well as about some of the support that we want to do with career development, with some of the CTE courses, and help teens to have more career options before they graduate from high school. We actually had 2 different mental health resources communities come in. We have lots of people come in. That's always so invigorating for us to try to see what else is happening and how we can use what's happening outside to help us to keep better too. And then just a focus on working smarter. So we're constantly thinking about, with the addition of Karina and Kelly, they probably have more gray hair than they did before. I don't know. But they also have been able to kind of think out of the box. And so we've really worked hard to do some things that, we hadn't thought about in a while. So Karina's going to share with you some of the enrollment changes this year. This is one of those ways that we're working to work smarter.
So, we're going to miss you seeing in person in April, but now you can do an online enrollment in the comfort of your home, take 2 hours.
What do you think about that?
On a Saturday night. So, the first, I'll just walk you through the steps. One of the steps is making sure you have a login on fax. For those families who are paying early ed fees or are paying extended learning fees, you will already have a login ID, and so you don't need to worry about the first step. The ones who don't would be the families who are paying incidental bills, which are generally going out trips, camping trips, exhibitions, and so on and so forth. They would get an email like this from the fax. The email ID is no reply to at fax management that you want to look out for. Once you get this email, you want to click on the link down here and create a login ID. We request that you do this from this particular email because we want to make sure it ties into the correct data that already exists on the fax website. If you have any questions, or if you're not sure you had a login before, or you just want help figuring out the whole process, we'll be available. Kelly, I, and Kim and Brandy, all of us at the Cupola will be available during PPCs, and of course until this enrollment process is complete, to help you walk through. And if you just want us to sit next to you while you finish the process, we're there to help you guys out. Once you move from the first step, from your February PPCs until March 15th, what we need for you guys is to give us your family level information. So if you have multiple kids, you generally have to fill out multiple emergency contact forms and give out details about confirming with us if your details are correct, if your partner's details are correct, if your address is correct. So you don't have to do that anymore. You fill this form on a family level. You give us, it is the first time you're doing it, so you will have to enter some information in it. But you will tell us where you stay, all your demographics. You will give us your military status information. You will give us your emergency contact information. And this process will have to be completed by 15 March. So you have a month's time to finish this process, and if you feel like you're stuck somewhere and you need help, like I said, you can always come in and our doors are always open to walk in and ask for help.
Maybe take 10-15 minutes to use.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. If you feel like you need the help, just a simple thing like drop by in PPC if you have a simple question, or you feel like maybe you could you found something different and you would like help with that, or you just want everybody else to know that you did this and this helped you with the process, feel free to stop by.
What's the customer number?
The customer number is something that's filled already by fax. It's something that exists that fax gives you. So this will be pre-filled for you. You wouldn't have to fill this, but anything below this will have instructions of what needs to happen, and you should be able to complete the process. Like, you can always call us, leave us, email us, or just stop by.
Question, is it that go fax, that's the next screen that comes up then?
When you create a login, yes, when you create a login, this is the first form that you'll have to go and fill in. The next process we will have is from March 15th to April 15th that will allow you to pay your enrollment fee. It's giving you a month's time to, you can make part payments, you can pay as per your convenience. You get paid on the 20th of March, you want to pay on 20th of March, you can pay on 20th of March. You would like to break down into weekly payments, it's all up to you as per your convenience. This is a learner registration form that will come along with your enrollment fees. This will be specific to each learner you will have. So you have 2 kids at the school, you'll get 2 incidental bills, and each one of them will have a learner registration form where we'll ask you details specific to your child, whether it needs a health plan, if you need us to update any information, whether any information you gave to us during last school year has changed. There's ways for you to contact us and let us know. It's pretty simple and straightforward. You don't have to fill in too many details if you're a returning family. If you're a new family, you'll have to fill in a little bit of information because we want to make sure we have all that we need to support your child at the school. If you guys, if anybody needs help with a payment plan, we'll address that issue as well. You can extend your payment plans like always over the summer, so we can help you with that process as well. Just come and talk to us. Let us know that you need figuring out a payment plan for your enrollment fee. But that's about it. If you have questions, bring them to us during PPC days. We'll be here in the summit.
Keep going, Kelly.
Next one. So we send out a survey during the springtime or the May PPCs to our families, asking feedback upon, how they would like things changed or how they feel, just feedback on our staff generally. And
Which partly led to the enrollment conversation.
We've heard great feedback. We've got great numbers, as you can see. 98% of our survey results say that the Studio and Cupola staff have been very helpful, and they know your kids very well. But we're always welcome to, you're always welcome to let us know if anything you feel could, help change the process a little bit, or you feel that we could do things a little bit differently. We're always open to feedback. As you can see, 99% of the parents feel that staff work proactively to address any concerns that the kids may have. So, like I said,
Yeah. So, they get a studio level and as well as the cupola
Cupola
level.
staff, yeah.
Gets that information, so the studios go through and read all your comments. They actually, as part of their year-end paperwork, give feedback to me about what they thought about those. Sometimes they'll say, gosh, we had 3 parents say this to us. We never even thought about that. And so they have a chance to really reflect on those comments that are always very helpful, even if, it's not always what we want to hear. Of course, we encourage you to say it in the moment, but we try to learn from each of those situations too. Thank you, Frank. So you already know this. They're the hardest working staff on the planet, right? And, earlier I talked about the Montessori credentialing, which is really exciting. And, when we converted to a charter school in 2002, we sat down as a staff first and later with staff and families and board members and said, gosh, as a Montessori school, how do we blend Montessori with standardized education? And we still ask that same question today, and we'll continue to ask that question. And, back in 2002, the standardized test was using tally marks was our concern. It was about show tally marks of how many of this happened or that happened. And I remember I was a teacher of those first years of the I-STEP testing, and I had like 85%, there was only like 12 children taking the test, pass math, and 87% pass language. And the next year I had 69% pass math. And I'm like, oh, what did I do to these children? I didn't teach them something. And so I started to dig deeper. And that year there was 3 questions on tally marks. I didn't ever teach tally marks. I didn't even think it was that important. I didn't know why that was going to be something I would prioritize with these, 3rd level children. And so we continue to learn, and the test continues to adjust, and we still keep getting more information from the state. So it's a process for us to take the Montessori philosophy and our belief about scope and sequence, and Maria Montessori's beliefs that every child has within them everything that they need, and know that our counterparts in a conventional education system are, seeing multiple problems a day that they're going to be tested on later. And we as a school stand committed that we're not going to do that. And we're not going to teach the test. And we're going to try to do enough of those things to help kids be successful. And so when I have families come in, which we have, anywhere from 5 to a dozen families come every Wednesday for a tour, and sometimes they'll say, well, I've looked at your test scores and I'm struggling. I want my child to go to college. I want this and that. And I said, well, we've never had a child that didn't want to do those things that couldn't. And I oftentimes talk about my own 2 children, that were in the 1st and 3rd graduating class of school. And, because we walk the walk, we didn't do anything special with them different than anybody else. My oldest is in graduate program at Notre Dame. Our youngest is graduating this year from IU. Both of them could fill both of their dreams from being at the school. This isn't going to impede that from happening. We also understand that each child's different. And so, one child that goes to school here may do very well on standardized testing just because that's more of their learning style. And another child might struggle. They both have a similar set of information. But we understood when we took that vow as a charter school in 2002, we had to try to find the right balance. So over the years, we continue. And so what I'll go through with you now is where that balance is now, how we're doing, what some of the goals are with that. It just talks about some of the interventions we do as a staff, following the sequence, but also being consistent with the standards. One of the things that we added to the 9 to 12 program and the 12 to 14 program is a program called Master Connect. we very carefully add anything. But one of the things we wanted to do is to give enough practice of things that we thought they understood without making that everything that we do. And so it's still a program that we're using and learning about and trying to make sure we have a balance with that. And until you're a practitioner, it's really hard to understand. You know, parents will say sometimes, well, why don't you just do this? If you just do this, then everything will be fine. Well, 2 years ago, the math portion of the I-STEP changed from one-step answers to now 3 or 4 questions total that are 4 or 5-step answers. And so it's a different ball game. And so the staff is constantly trying to find a way to practice that without overstepping the Montessori scope and sequence. So it's a process for us, and we'll continue it. So you can keep going, Paul. So these are some of the ways that we're accountable for those pieces. So the A to F accountability program from the state, which I think that almost every superintendent signed the letter to the to the state superintendent against the A to F process, that they did not feel like it was a value. So we're not the only ones in that. Sometimes we are right in line with what the conventional schools also believe. The state hopes that our graduation waiver process will be accepted. So I don't know if you know what that means, but with the new ESSA guidelines, which are the federal education guidelines, there was a removal that we could have anything except the Core 40 diploma. And so because that is now our standard diploma, they wouldn't let anything go through other than that. I thought the state of Indiana, the superintendent's office and otherwise, did a great job of writing a waiver to the federal government saying, here's this state, and they have the same requirements as our general diploma versus a Core 40 diploma. So sometimes there's a team that is not, it's not in their best interest to continue the Core 40 standard diploma in Indiana, and so we then move to what's called a general diploma. It makes some changes in the content and the coursework that they do, but if this waiver doesn't pass from the state, then that means that our school, who you see down here, has this accountability score from this year and the year before as a C, whatever that means, and that's another whole conversation in itself. It's also, it could be a D or an F if this waiver process doesn't go through. And that will happen with most of the high schools in the state, because we all give waivers to kids that cannot pass the graduation exam based on a criteria that's given to us by the state. But if the federal government doesn't approve this waiver process, then we can't count them as a success at our school. So we're still seeing how that all will flush out. Yeah, go ahead.
Will you speak to the graduation exam? That's the first
Yeah.
that I've heard anything about that.
Yeah, so it used to be called the GQE, then it was called the ECA, and now it's called I-STEP 10. And so whether it's used as an actual graduation exam in the future, what's been proposed recently is the ACT and SAT will now become the graduation exams. For those kids that aren't doing the ACT or SAT or aren't doing college bound, there'll be some other criteria. So we love the fact that things are becoming more varied, but it's also really confusing, especially for a small school with just a couple of people. Obviously, we're parts of networks that help with that, but does that help? Does that answer your question?
The I-STEP 10 is a test that they must pass currently in order to get the Core 40 diploma.
Right.
And an honors diploma is a step above the Core
That's
40.
right.
Is that right?
And then there's the general diploma. There's some other like a technical honors diploma as well. The general diploma just removes some of those things. But even if kiddo's working for the Core 40 and they've taken the test every time and gone through those criteria, and we offer them a waiver, then per the accountability system, if we don't get this waiver from the state, the federal government approved, we can't count them as a graduate. It would look like they dropped out. Yeah. There's also a lot of rules about how many learners can qualify, so only if they're here for 162 days. The alternative assessments went away, so a kiddo with exceptional needs that we worked out a different plan, they also can affect how that whole process works. We also miss points because of our small class size, so if we don't have a certain number, then we don't qualify for that level of points. So it's always a little bit of a magic show when we look at the accountability grade from the state and how it comes up with that. In years past, when we've had a D as a grade, it could have been 2 children passing one test. that would have made us from a D to a C. So all of those things are always very interesting. We try not to extend all of our time towards that, but we try to do enough of it so that we could be smart, which is kind of what we're doing with this whole graduation waiver process. So these are some of the goals that we've set as a staff for school success improvement, assessment analysis. Depending on when we get the results, the goal from the state is for us to get the results by the time before kids leave for the year. That has never happened, but we keep waiting for it. And so it would be really helpful in the same year that we could talk about it then instead of wait till August, which is what's happened the last, 5 years or more. But so that's why they're trying to put everyone online. That's an area too, because right now we got exception to allow paper pencil assessment for the first section of ISTEP for most of our younger ages this year, and then everyone has to be computerized for the second part, which happens at the end of April. But it's really hard because as a Montessori school, we don't do a lot of computer work at the 6 to 9 year old age level, and we try to balance that in the 9 to 12 level. And now you have to show them how to do technology enhanced questions using calculators online and moving data and so forth. That affects, and that puts us a little bit at disadvantage. So some things that the staff will do is they set up multi-word problems to help them to practice it. Each level, 9 to 12, 12 to 14, 6 to 9, and so forth, creates their goals for the year, what their plans are for their school success. And so that's part of this individualized intervention. So as they do that, they'll say, we're going to do this practice test on this month, then we're going to review it during these weeks. And so they create this plan. We did that a few years ago prior to these new standards, and we saw a significant increase specifically in our math scores. We've seen that dip back down again with the new assessment that started 2 years ago. And so we're still trying to find the right balance between that as well. One of the things that you may not be aware of, and this is all online if you go onto our website, but we have what's called a differentiated staffing schedule. And so part of that process is years ago, it's probably been 5 or 6 years since we've looked at it as a full staff again. We created what we felt like was a successful staff member. And so school success is one part of it. I think it's 20% of that overall component of that. So each year as the staff look at the assessments and they make a goal for those. And when I get to these other slides, I'll kind of show you how that works too. Any questions right now? So this is the I-Read 3, which was known as the retention test in the state of Indiana for many years, because if a third level didn't pass this test, then they had to be retained per the state guidelines. That shifted finally. Just this year, the state's given the schools the right to say, you decide what to do about that. Prior to that, we used some other methods to allow our families to make that decision still. But it's an interesting assessment. It's pretty painless as a standardized assessment goes, but for a kiddo that is that isn't reading at a typical age level, it could be very, very, very frustrating for them. So anyway, you kind of see where we were and how it's gone up and down. You have to remember these are I think it's 37 children that took this test this year. So it's a small population. So 1 or 2 passing or not passing changes that percentage quite a bit. But anyway, so it's pretty consistent as it was last year. You can keep going. So there's the ISTEP data. So those 30% of the math, we wish this is when the new test started. The state average, I think, is 54%. For math right now across the grade levels. The language assessment, we're a little bit higher than the state average for language. And so then this is the Northwest evaluation. So we do this for some second and then all the third and all the way up through 8th level for that. So if you see, this is the percentage of growth. And so when they take it in the fall and the spring, so the norm group would tally what that growth should be for a third level that got a 197 in the fall should get a 201 in the spring. And if they beat that group of numbers, then they would be considered that they grew from fall to spring. So we had, for reading, we had 49% in the growth area, and the ones that were proficient for reading was 62. And then for language, pretty similar. Okay, you can already think, what's the math going to look like? So the math is the growth was at 34%, but the proficiency had grown from 26% last year to 37%. NWA did a change this year. This is when they correlated with the Indiana standards. So Indiana didn't choose somebody else's standards. They created their own for that. So this is the I-STEP summary. Math again, struggling. I will tell you that the pass rate in math across the state, I think it was 36%. So it's a very low pass rate statewide, and that's what the state average is. So there are lots of things that we do at this end of the building to also support that process. Okay. So this is as a staff, when we look at different ways for kids to be successful. So this shows the percentage. This was 2013 and so forth of kids. So in math, if they either passed the I-STEP, if they showed proficiency on NWA math, or they met the growth for NWA math, that gives them a tally in this. So if you look at that, 66% of our kids were successful in one of those areas of math, 91% in reading, and 83% in language. So it's one of those areas, so that's how we assess our staff as well. So that's that 20% that I shared with you on the differentiated staffing schedule, so that there are multiple ways to show a child showing growth or showing proficiency on the school success components of our holistic approach. Questions about any of that? So just some summary points. We continue to look for the balance. We're working for the most difficult aspect. Our goal is that holistic part of helping kids to know themselves, and really want to keep supporting our staff to know. One of the things that we did for that staff in-service day that was canceled because of the snow, then we had a snow day. And so all of our staff came in and took webinars about how the I-STEP tests were graded. And for example, at the 9 to 12, so each week, each level meets as a group for 30 minutes or so. And so the 9 to 12 group met, and one of them shared what she had learned from the math webinar. And she said, it wasn't just that they had to show a process, they had to show the specific process that the scorer was looking for in order to get points. We're like, what? That's changed. It used to be, part of the Common Core belief was it didn't matter how a child found the answer, as long as they found the answer. And now there's a movement towards it has to be written in a certain formulaic, thank you, process, instead of just show that they had a process that worked for that. So anyway, but those are important things to know, because one of the things that 9 to 12 level did then was to get back out those formulas and help children to see. So here's the deal. When you're doing this kind of problem for this kind of purpose, this is what you would use instead of just using your brain all the time and thinking about it. And it's really hard for us, to be honest, because we're telling them stop being creative and do it like this, but trying to find that balance. So, but our biggest important part is that transition to adulthood. So as they keep moving up, how do we do that? So Hannigan and Danielle, come share. Okay. Do we both want to come up here?
Sure.
What are we doing?
We didn't get our choreography polished, so give us a minute. We are missing the third part of our team. So I'm Hannigan, this is Danielle, and there is a third member here. If you can imagine, Valerie is right here in spirit. She was unable to join us this evening, but she was part of our preparation for our portion of the evening's presentation. Danielle and I both spent a lot of years as advisors in the studios, and we served in the islands level as well as in the woods levels. And so we are intimately aware of the various challenges and needs and goals of both of those age levels. And so as our teens program has grown, this year will be our 8th graduating class. As our teens program has grown and grown, there's a lot of evolution that goes along with that. And our new roles as part of the teen transition team, they have evolved along with those. And so while we're not directly in the studios anymore. We're now able to work with and serve and support all of the studios now instead of being just positioned into one. And so just like preparing for adulthood, adulting, if you will, just like that requires a lot of different skills, our jobs reflect that. Any given day may involve a wide variety of activities because getting kids ready for the next step is a multifaceted challenge. But these are the things we try to keep in mind, that this is the big umbrella that we're operating underneath. We want them to feel prepared, and we don't feel that success in adulthood looks any one certain way, just like we don't feel like success for the learners while they're here has to look one certain way. So we want to figure out how to empower each learner, each teen as they're transitioning into adulthood. We want to empower them to feel like they are equipped to follow and pursue any opportunity that they desire. So if that means college, that's the plan we swing into to help them to feel as prepared as possible and have all of those options open for them. If that is they want to head straight into career or have some other adventure in mind, then we adapt and we work to help them to be ready for that next step. So empowerment, as you can see here with our graduates from last year, empowerment can look a lot of different ways as well. And while we do a lot of guiding and advising and offering feedback and perhaps questioning at times, the goal is always to keep the seniors, if you will, the cohort that is graduating, to keep them in the driver's seat as much as possible. Would like to
So I think when we're talking about the transition to adulthood, it's important to look back at some of our previous graduating classes and also look at our current graduating class and into the future at the same time because, like what we said, it's a very complex sort of situation we're looking at. So this is a snapshot of our graduates since 2011. Our very first graduating class had 14 teens in it, and last year we had our largest graduating class of 44. So that's pretty exciting. Though typically our median really is in the 30s at some point. So
you don't take kids after that 10th level year.
Right. So since we don't take kids after that 10th level year, we kind of settle into somewhere between 30 and 35 in most years. The rate that we have going on to college, applying, getting accepted to college, and following through that with that process has been anywhere from 66% all the way up to 81%. But for the most part, it really stays in the 70s to 80% margin. So that's quite exciting. And our academic honors diploma is very similar in that it stays in kind of the 30% margin, with it dipping just a couple of years in there. One of the things we've really been working on is encouraging all of our upperclassmen, juniors, and seniors to take some level of dual credit coursework. Right now we offer 4 different dual credit courses through Ivy Tech on campus, where they're able to actually take a course that they can see exactly what's happening in the college classroom within the comfort of their own physical environment. And we've really been kind of sticking in the 50 and 60 percentile range with that.
You also go off campus for dual credit?
Yes, so we have several kids who go off campus for dual credit throughout the year, and they can go off to any campus. We're very fortunate in that we have a lot of college campuses nearby. So we have some kids who travel to Ivy Tech on a daily basis for dual credits. We have other kids who take online courses through IUS or travel on campus for that. And then also several kids who take advantage of online accelerated courses through Trine University. And what's nice about that is it allows them to get an even wider offering, anything they're offering online or on campus for them there.
Okay. I remember when we had our first graduating class 8 years ago, and staff who were all here, I'm sure we all remember, there was a general question and anticipation of, and I'm sure Barbara and Glenn could speak to this the most, this grand experiment. Does it work? Are they going to get into college or be ready for the next step in that process? And we're continuing to constantly fine-tune and course correct. And just like I said earlier, we don't believe that success looks this one way. So going to college does not mean you get the gold sticker, and those who don't choose that path did not. However, we know that there is a lot of interest in what sort of opportunities are available were your teen to choose to pursue the college track. And so it works. 8 years in, the good news is it works. The learners who are wanting to pursue college as their next step are finding great success, and they're getting really positive feedback from the schools that they're applying to, because we look really different. And that is an advantage when colleges are sorting through thousands of teens. We look really different. And our teens have a wide variety of experiences that are not like what their counterparts have. They complete internships. That's almost unheard of at the high school level, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But just so you could see, just a sampling of the various acceptances. We've got a lot of Midwest schools happening, and I'm not going to read the whole list to you, but we have a lot of learners staying in Indiana as well as the neighboring states. But we've got kids scattering here, there, and everywhere and finding success at that next level, which is terribly exciting. We have alumni days, or when we interact with them on the social media, it's quite exciting to see what these next steps look like for them. Beyond just the getting accepted to college, our learners have also had a lot of success with scholarships, which is very helpful. And so we spend, and I wish Valerie was here to speak of that, but Valerie spends a lot of time, and if you're in the teens program, or if your teen is in the teens program, you see the emails. She spends a lot of time working with making sure that those scholarship opportunities are being communicated and connected with the teens. And last year, they were offered over $1 million in scholarships. So that's helpful and very positive as well. Money is, it's necessary. So
For college.
okay.
So one
Can
of
you go back just one second?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Just back up just a second. I just wanted you to notice, do you see the colors of the gown?
I was just about to talk about
Oh,
this,
you were?
Barbara.
I'm sorry. Go ahead then.
Oh, man,
I just
take
was
it
going to bring that up because the traditional way is the girls would wear a color, and I just was gonna-
So, steal my thunder. So I was going to start with, it's always very exciting when working with a new class, because one of the things that they get to do is design their whole entire graduation process from the ceremony up. And sometimes that looks similar from year to year, but the planning part of it is never very similar. So
I've never seen Darth Vader at a graduation
until
except for here.
Right.
So
So they start with everything. They choose their gown colors. Frequently, I think what you're going for is that you'll see guys in one color and gals in another color at many schools. But here, they choose either one color that they can all agree on, or they choose a set of colors, and then they order the color that they so desire. And getting to an agreement on those one or two colors is just as colorful of an experience because teenagers don't frequently agree on many things
there
together.
may have been a group lobbying for like gold sequins or like a lame kind of situation.
We were on a tie-dye track this year for a solid month. And once I showed them how dye bled in fabric, they were unimpressed and got off of that. So we could sometimes lead them down different tracks, but they're quite creative in that. So this goes with everything, including their graduation announcements, the trips they want to take together, how they want to make decisions together, everything. This year, with the class of 2018, this is them at the very beginning of the school year on our first senior retreat, the first time we really came together to make decisions. I forget if this was at the very beginning of the day, before.
Oh, I know.
Before they ate.
It may have been.
Yeah.
They look awfully chipper. So.
They were very chipper and excited, and hadn't really realized the journey ahead of them. This year we have 31 teens currently preparing for graduation in May, and 24 of them have completed one or more dual credit courses this year. And I think that kind of number in comparison is really kind of telling a story of how we're trying to open their eyes to that experience. Because sometimes we have teens that aren't really sure with what they're wanting to do in the future. And so with having that experience on campus, it allows us to kind of help them see that. Also to date, 12 of these teens have received acceptance letters to college in fall of 2019. And we're still pretty early on in that process, as we haven't met a lot of deadlines for college applications at this point. So we're very excited to kind of be midway through that process with this class. As Hannigan was saying, it's kind of an ongoing process of helping them search for scholarships and all that. Yes?
Are they all taking
Not that I've heard of.
I think you said 2019, so there may have been a collective panic.
Yes, 2018.
2018.
I think I'm confused as to what year it is now. I've frequently marked things as 2017, and the teens correct me. So next fall, they are
A couple months from now, they're doing
into
it.
college.
They're doing it.
We'll go with that. Thank you. Yeah. Whew. Yes, one collectively here. So it's kind of exciting to see that. A little bit of how we make it happen. Next slide. It's kind of complex. Advisors play a huge role in helping pull together coursework from year to year. Advisors right now are working on 4-year plans that kind of are a blueprint for what the teens' 4 years are going to look like, and are going to help kind of space out what happens from year to year and help them plan not just for the future of their high school career, but plan for kind of gaining areas of interest as we get to that point. And there are really kind of 4 ways that we're looking at doing this. Right now, we have 5 graduation portfolios in addition to our Indiana required state credits. And they are portfolios that delve into a deeper investigation in these 5 areas. So one of them is the government exploration portfolio. Another is the entrepreneurship portfolio, where they're creating a business plan and trying to open their own sort of business venture. Another is they can choose between a health and wellness portfolio or a second language inclusive. And I'm forgetting one, philanthropy. And finally, capstone. And capstone is kind of their mark they want to leave on the world and what they've learned in their 4 years here. So those are all really involved processes and projects that kind of help them pull all of this information in a really abstract way and present it to their peers and to the community in very cool ways. The last part of that portfolio process is our internships. So they can start interning when they turn 16, and they must have at least 4 before graduating. Our interns go out into the community and have supervisors within local businesses and organizations that they meet with over a 10-week period of time every fall and every spring. Our alumni, when they come back during Alumni Day, frequently tell us how valuable the internship program is. Many of our alumni have gone right into jobs from their internships after they graduated from high school. Some went away to college and then came back to internship locations that they interned at previously, and are working to open more internship locations for our current teens. So this has been a very interesting evolution to be a part of, especially as we kind of continue inviting alumni back and speaking with them. And that's something that has kind of developed in my role, a way to help them more successfully find internships that are really going to stick and that are meaningful for them. Because I remember there was one teen years ago who said, I really wanted to be a lawyer so badly. It was everything I wanted to do. So I went and I interned with a lawyer. And what I found was I really didn't want to be a lawyer. So then they're like, so maybe I thought I was going to be a doctor. So they went and they interned with a doctor, and they came back and said, well, nope, no, that's not what I want to do either. I think their next internship, they're like, well, I really don't think I want to do this. I think it was something with computers and networking, but I'm going to go do it anyways. And they came back, they're like, wow, I really love that. That was great. So part of the process is they find out what they don't want. And sometimes that's just as important as finding out what they do want. Do you want to talk about this next part, or do you want me, career and technical?
Well, so I'm still thinking about internships. I'm smiling.
We can talk about that too.
My husband, besides his regular job, he runs the theater company that we're involved with in downtown New Albany, and he has 2 interns. He's never had interns before. So 2 of our teens that he doesn't know well just started with him on Fridays, never had interns before. And at the end of the day, he texted me and said, "This is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. They worked so hard. Everything I gave them, they just finished it." And so our teens are representing us well out in the community, which is awfully exciting. So, as we said before, that preparing for the next step looks a lot of different ways. We don't make assumptions that kids are going to go on to any one particular path next. So we've talked a lot about the college side of things. In Indiana, there is as Barbara mentioned, the requirements and the things that the DOE are focusing on. It's a bit of a moving target. Every week we get a memo and it's like, oh, what are the requirements this week? And
we don't know, but we'll let you know soon.
We'll let you know. But it's all very high stakes, yet unclear.
It's very important that you do this. We don't know how, but it's very important that you get it done.
And next week it's going to be something else. But something that's remained consistent over the last few years and that's gaining momentum is the idea of the CTE courses, so career and technical education classes. So schools in the area, this is not just for our school, this is statewide, and we have some schools in the area that large schools that have a lot of manpower and resources behind them that are have really developed this process, and so we are working to figure out what this looks like in our setting, because we are very different than a school that has 1,600 high schoolers. And so and I wish Valerie was here as well, we are doing a lot of meeting and talking about how do we make these courses available. And these are in every different type of career path. So I am licensed in the Family and Consumer Sciences. I have a CTE license in that area, which means that I can oversee courses, and it's a wide variety of courses, everything from child development and early childhood education to culinary arts and hospitality. And so by getting these licensure areas, and we're all working on different ones, we now can offer these CTE courses, which show up differently on the transcript, and it shows that a learner has focused on a particular career path and has done additional coursework in that particular arena. So we can't do CTE courses without us having these licensure areas. So that's something we're actively working on to figure out how to make all of these opportunities available, so that if we have a learner who wants to go into culinary arts, we are there to provide those opportunities and connections between here as well as connections out in the community with people working out in the field. Is that a concise way of putting it? It's a large conversation.
Yeah,
so.
and we really are doing a lot of that in conjunction with Ivy Tech, so that
that's
some
why I
schools
wish
utilize
Valerie.
Prosser.
Right.
Do you want to talk about that?
No, go ahead.
No, some schools utilize Prosser, and for us, kids can do almost everything in the same way at Ivy Tech, and it usually costs a lot less. And they can also use their internship programs for that as well. So.
Right, so we're having all those conversations, and Valerie's been meeting with folks at Ivy Tech to figure out what that partnership can look like to provide even broader opportunities.
And this is a process that's really just starting for us, because it's something that we also hope to link to new diploma requirements as they come in the future. So as much as we're starting it right now, we're really looking a couple of years down the road when we have to have this in place. So we're making sure that when we have to have this in place, we already kind of have a well-oiled machine, a mostly well-oiled machine, ready to go with this process. So we have very specific offerings for our kids, and they can feel ready and comfortable too. Also, in looking to the future, we are starting to play this idea of something right now that we're calling life folders. And this is something that's really going to hopefully help our teens be able to vocalize what they want to do with their lives, or what they think they might want to do with their lives. And so we're hoping to team up with the Island's advisors. And as they start, yes, the 12 to 14-year-olds, as they start talking about career options, we start putting those narratives that they're speaking about down there, some of the online kind of quizzes and such that the kids take for what career they might want to do, collecting that data so that teens can look through it as they grow. And that can be a reminder that goes with them as to what different careers they're looking into. What have they discovered that they love? What have they discovered that they don't love? And we're hoping that that informs the coursework they do with CTEs, as well as the internships they're doing and potentially the portfolios they're doing for a more well-rounded, solidified curriculum. So, also, with life folders, it's hopefully going to help them prepare them for really concrete tasks, like how to adult in the more necessary senses, like budgeting and such. So
That was a beautiful transition.
that was the best transition I had for
We were tasked with transitioning to money, so there it is.
So money.
Well played. Well played.
Thank you.
That's what happens. Yep.
Speaking of money.
Speaking of money.
So I'm Kelly. I'm pretty new to this position. I was a DS for several years before I moved up front. So I'm still have a lot to learn, and I've learned a lot over the last year. So go ahead. All right. So enrollment has steadily grown over the years. We are currently full with 100+ learners on the wait list. So for the lottery on Monday. In July of 2016, the mortgage loan was refinanced, and by refinancing and with loan payments, we were able to decrease our outstanding balance by $800,000. And with that extra money, we have been able to increase teacher salary and training, and hopefully provide a new space that will be the CASA. So,
Yeah. So one of the things when, before we started the school, and I was working at my family business, my dad's business, Retailer Supply, and when I came onto that position, I said, "Gosh, Dad, why don't we get new this? Why don't we get new this?" The business was, very simple, and I was my role when we started was to employ a new computer system or a computer system, and he said, "Barbara, when I took over this business, there was so much debt. I couldn't answer the phone without someone wanting money." And he said, my main goal was to get the past debt paid off and pay bills on time. And he said, I will never go back to that place where I owe people money. And, at first I'm like young, I'm in my 20s, like, yeah. But I started realizing, I worked in the business as the office manager for 5 years, how important that was. And it shaped what we do here. Because I will tell you, it is not uncommon for a charter school to have financial issues because we get so much less money than what a conventional school. You may already know this, but normally Floyd County Schools gets $3,500 more per year, at least, than we get per year. And that's just their facility component from what Floyd County residents pay for taxes.
Per kid?
Per child. Per year.
Kid,
yeah.
per year.
And then there's additional amounts that add up to about another $500. But I realized how intentional we'd have to be in that process, and I sought a lot of support when we started the school, mostly from professors at IUS that helped advise me, but I really wanted to make sure that I never had to prolong a payroll or ever got into any kind of financial situation. Now, most of you that know me wouldn't call me conservative, but I am very conservative when it comes to money. And so, as you can see, the green marks are actuals and the blue marks are budget, and we still hit budget, but there was a caveat there. But we've always hit budget as a school, and most of the time we've hit it by over, an extensive amount of money. Some people feel like that's a lot of money. Well, when you have a school with question marks, we can't just, if we don't have the numbers that we applied for as far as the enrollment piece in September, we don't get money for those children all year long. Like if we started the school year and had 50 less children than what we had budgeted for, we can't ever make that money back up, even if we add them in October and November. So there's a concern, and that's what happens to a lot of charter schools. If they don't hit those benchmarks, they get into a financial situation. So we always have to hope for less. So with that, we've always been able to do very well financially, which is how it's got us in this situation right now where we're looking at expanding because we've been able to save some money through that budgeting. You can keep going, Kelly. So this shows about our excess revenues over expenses. So obviously very, very strong, very high. Keep going. There's our general fund budget revenues. So 85% of our money comes from the state basic grant. The other's from programs, early education program materials fee. So it all counts, almost all of it, on how many kids we have enrolled. We've been really, really fortunate in that process. And in a painful way, right? When you have families that come to do a tour and you're like, I'm sorry you missed the lottery deadline, but get back on the waiting list. Hopefully it'll all work out, you know? It's really, really hard, but that's where the majority of our money comes from. Our expenditures, so if you were to look the year before we did the refinance, 63% of our budget for expenditures was salaries. Now it's 72%, so it shows you how we've been able to increase the salaries. And also our what we're paying for the mortgage was 20%, and now it's down to 11% from our refinancing. So, woo. Who wants to explain this one? Do you want to go through this? Just kidding. This is a kind of a benchmark. Oh no, I'm sorry. Hold on, Will Robinson. You probably could just hit escape.
It's on his TV. You hit the input.
So yeah, you can relocate.
Well, I love that slide so much, I'm going to show it to you, right? So what that... There you go, okay. So this is kind of a performance benchmark that Ball State came up with. So it looks at things like our working capital ratio. When we first got the loan for this building, I had to put together a lot of these things. This is what banks want to know. They want to understand what kind of temperature your finances are, so that they could see if there's somebody you want to loan money to. As you know, when we got the loan to build phase 1 of the school, which we finished in 2006, it was a miracle. You know, who's going to give somebody that has a Ball State charter for 3 to 5 years, $6 million, and later another $5 million on top of that. And thank goodness we got that second loan right before 2008 hit, in that process. So we owe a little bit, as Kelly showed you a little bit ago, about $5,800 on those loans from the $11 million that we started with. So these are all just the temperature gauges. So very high, our working capital ratio, our quick ratio, our unrestricted cash, meaning that this is how much money we could go for just on what we have in cash if we didn't have any revenue coming in. Our enrollment is almost exactly at 100%. Our margin for, that's the liabilities and the revenue, our debt asset ratio, our cash flow, how much money we have on hand that we can use, and the debt service coverage, so Ball State wanted that to be at 1.10, we're at 2.34. So all of those areas are, something that makes us very healthy financially, and something that's really important to me personally, because I never want to be at a point like I know a lot of private and charter schools have been in, to say, I'm sorry, we're going to have to hold off on payroll for a week or two. So we're really happy that that's where we are with that. Yeah, go ahead.
Do you just do annual, or are you monthly roll forwards or anything? All of these?
These are all annual, so we do them June 30th.
Okay.
Yeah, we roll them June 30th. Yeah. Yeah.
The 5-year certification that you get,
Uh-huh.
you said earlier we're in year 2 of
Yep.
5,
Right.
Is this a part of their consideration when they're looking at us for research?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is frankly probably the second reason that they've closed charter schools before in the state is for financial reasons. So we've always been very, very fortunate. Do you know what the cooperative supplemental pay is? So one of the things that we presented to the staff a few years ago was an idea to create kind of a bonus system, as you will. So a way to, what happens with schools specifically is that, unlike a business where you can just increase the tuition, what we found as a charter school is that our tuition has gone down more than it's gone up in the history since 2002. So you can't just plan on things keep going up. So what do? People want to have increases in their pay. So, what happens, you've heard this happen in conventional public schools where they've had to do a hiring freeze, or a salary freeze for a certain period of years. We've never had to do that. We have a salary structure that's consistent. And one of the things that we've put together in order to try to help as we are increasing salaries without exponentially affecting the budget. So when you increase salaries 5 years down the road, how are you going to pay for those if the revenues didn't go up in the same way? And you saw 85% of our funds come from the state basic grant. So we came up with this idea of cooperative supplemental pay, which means that at the end of the year, we look at our revenues over expenses, which would be called in the for-profit world a net profit. And so, I proposed to the staff and to the board that we would take 40% of that and give that back to the staff in a stipend for the following fall. So we've been doing that now for 3 or 4 years? 3 years. So this past year was the third year. It was what, $3,600? So each staff member, no matter what they made, got $3,600 this October as their stipend for that. So what was the coolest part about that to me was when I sat down with all the staff and we came up with a committee that kind of decided how we were going to propose this. And so we had worked out all these different ways, like if we did it by years of service or we did it by percentage of salary. And so we go in prepared with all this information, and someone said, I think everyone should get the same amount regardless of what they make. And I'm like, I wasn't expecting that. It was a really big jump. It's the person that makes $20,000 a year for the person that makes 40 or 50 would get the exact same amount. So that's what is put in place, which is really cool. And so that was decided upon by the committee. We do a financial audit every year. One of the good things that happened was the State Board of Education used to do an audit on us, as well as an independent financial audit. And finally, through a lot of lobbying efforts by our consortium, they combined the two. So now we just get one audit that does both things. We've had a clean audit every year. Kelly's first year, big kudos for Kelly because she got a clean audit for this first year. It's a big process. So our cash flow is good with high balances. Our accounts payable is always timely. We have a very tight fiscal management, and we always have positive revenues over expenditures. The Smart Charter School, which we talked about, is full state basic grant, including full day kindergarten, which started a few years ago. We also just got word that we'll be able to start doing preschools for our early childhood program, special education, next year. So that'll be a first for us. So, actually, the first year as we were a charter school, they allowed us to do that and get funding for it. And then they took it away. And so we've been lobbying ever since. So finally, that's going to go back through again. So that's very cool. Which I hope what will happen with that is then those children that are in the 3 and 4 year old program that are here will be able to get into kindergarten above the people out in the community. So that will be a good change if that gets approved by Ball State as well. So the accountability, those are all the different people that we're accountable to. Our bank that we just refinanced with, German American, also asks for all of these things. We give them our audit, we give them those financial benchmarks and so forth. So they've been a great partner with us as well. Strong financials lead to getting school needs met, which is really important. And so one of our roles, Expansion Development Coordinator, we'll let Melissa take it from there.
Okay, so whenever I do my piece, I always like to just give a little background for people who haven't been around about why are we raising money for the things that we raise money for. And so we really try to, so I've been here, I'm in my 4th year at the school, and just being really intentional about why you're doing things and what you're doing those for is one of the main reasons that people feel compelled to support your mission. And we're in a really unique space as a charter school because we're sort of have things in common with a lot of people, but then other things different. So we aren't like all nonprofits, because we do get almost all of our funding from state funding, but we also don't get the same amount of state funding as a school. So we're similar to a school, but we don't get all the same funding. So we're left with making up the difference for that if we want to get things done that are going to make the school better and vibrant and stay, relevant and good for our community. So a few things happened. So that refinance was a really big deal for fundraising. So whenever I came on board, and for many years I think before, there was a big emphasis on this building as it existed, and sort of having that project come to fruition, and then also being able to really support our teachers with pay that they deserve. That was all able to be done primarily through that refinance and the actual money every month that we knew we would be getting back after we did that. And teacher salaries specifically, were increased about 13% overall. So that was a really big deal for us. So we're like, so, what can we do about this? So there was a survey that was done with staff, and they said, okay, so if we are going to resolve some of these issues, what are the remaining top needs? And solicited feedback on that, and that was the prioritizing the moolah committee, we called it. And so after all this, one of the main goals we have all these staff now, we have all these learners doing really neat things in the building, and if you go to sign out a space in the building, they're always full. And so we're like, if they're coming up with new ideas and we need places to do these things, where are they going? And then a lot of great activities that have been going on for many years. A great example is Pet Book Fair. That's been something that our families have supported for years and love, but it takes place in the MAC. And then our 6 to 9-year-olds can't get their big parachutes out and play in that space while that's going on for a whole week. So we were really shutting down this whole space for activities that really didn't need that space. And then in the example of some other situations, we had these beautiful theater projects that were happening in a space that's echoing and bouncing the sounds all over the place. And while that definitely gave our learners some experiences with how to creatively deal with this, we want to limit some of those challenges. So what we came up with was this Casa de Curiosity. And so we came up with this little tag of cultivating creativity, actualizing talent, showcasing courage, achieving dignity. And you can go on. And this is just the initial conceptual design that we have. So this is the MAC, this tall gray space that exists now. This is the future space. So it's kind of where the teen parking lot is now, is where we envision this space will be. And so this has been a huge focus of my time and effort, trying to support this project and make people in the community aware. But really what it's turned into, and what all fundraising is really about, if you talk to me about it, is just making people aware of what the school is about, what we're here for, why do people choose to come to our school? Why, if you could send your kid, every child can be accepted to the public school down the street from them. Why would you take the time and effort to come to an observation, figure out the lottery system, be on a waiting list, come to school, maybe start in October? All these things that families do, why does that happen? And how do we support that? So we want to continue to encourage those activities that are doing that. So we had a huge happening that I'll explain on the next slide that really helped this picture. But just so everybody knows where we are, we're about 1.1 million that we have in the door now that we've committed to this project. And 1.4 million will get us exactly what we want with this space. So we're about within 300,000 of that goal. And another thing, since this is family focused, we've really had this goal of at least 100,000 of this project coming from our families. And we've done pretty well with that, but we're still hovering in that 60,000 to 70,000 range. And if we could get to 100,000, I think it would mean a lot for the project. So that's kind of where we are. So the big jump in that this year, though, was really something that the Indiana legislature did that was exciting for us. And we actually did some lobbying for this 2 years ago, more so than the last year, because that's whenever this grant was first introduced. But they did pass, the state legislature passed as part of a budget, a facility funding grant. So this is specifically to support facility needs for charter schools. And it's about $500 per student.
Instead of $3,500.
Right, so I was getting there.
Yeah.
So Barbara mentioned that the difference of what's guaranteed every year from a student on one side of the street to the other is $3,500. But this was a little dent in that, which we were very grateful for, and that's over 2 years. We did already receive the first payment for that. The second payment would come in this next year. So that was a huge deal in that 1.1 million. Also, and it's also why it's important to continue to invite legislators to our school. We just had Terry Gooden, who's now House minority, speaker leader in our school, like a couple weeks before he was elected to that position. So we're trying to stay relevant and connected with those people so that they understand what we're doing, and that not all charter schools are the same. So we want you to see the range of things that are happening. We did have, we're trying to do some creative and different things in connection with the community for fundraising. We did do Give for Good Louisville, which is a regional giving day, as well as the National Giving Tuesday, and our families have really started participating in that. We hope we can build that up. We did last year go to the New Albany-Floyd County schools and asked to be considered as a part of their project fund, which is allowed by law, that charter schools can come and ask for that. We only went to the step of doing a presentation to the board to ask to be on the agenda. That's still a possibility, and we're working kind of with the leadership. Now there's been some leadership changes, potentially reopening that conversation. There's some opportunities to support there. On more the general broad awareness piece, we are doing a new video, hopefully, that will kind of express our philosophy better about us, that we can share in some of these efforts. If you can participate by being active with our social media and sharing our story, always I ask if there's anybody that you know that we should be talking to, that we need to get in the doors of our school, please let me know, because I will call them as many times as it takes to get them here. And we'll go one more. So to kind of close out, so we also this year, and we're doing it right now, we're really trying to be more intentional about making information about the school available in a lot of different formats. And so we started a blog this year, and we have lots of different kinds of content on there, from the videos of these presentations to written pieces that different members of our staff have done, to links to information on other places that might be of interest. So I really encourage you to get active with that. And then there's just lots of projects happening in the school all the time. We did this wonderful thing on our staff meeting tonight where people just said all the things that are going on in the building. And I thought one great example was in 6 to 9, they were doing a little bit of learning about writing poems, but then all the learners really got into poems and started writing all these poems because they wanted to, and not because anybody told them to. So things like that happen, that can happen because we provide the space and time for kids to follow those interests. I think that's really important, and we're trying to show people more of that in what we do. And I'm always available to you for questions or comments. And along this note, one of the other pieces that we ask, in addition to the financial piece, of course we always love the money, but we do make a commitment. I'm a parent too, and even as a volunteer, I make a commitment of a minimum of 10 hours of involvement with the school. And we have some really wonderful people who help us do this. We just had our chili cook-off a couple weeks ago, and that was thanks to Pip. I'm going to turn it over to you a little bit and let them tell you some of what they've been doing and introduce themselves. So, ladies.
I'm Melissa Cole, and I'm the president of PIP, and this is Sasha, and she's on council with me, and she's going to talk to you today because I have an anxiety issue.
It's okay, I made notes. I've got all the notes. So, PIP, we have council meetings, and we meet for the first part of the school year. We meet once a month. We talk about things that are coming up and that are going to be happening in the school. We go over grants. So each studio can submit a grant to the PIP council and say, we've got this going on in our studio. We want to see if we can get this X amount of funds from you to support us in this way. And we have a set amount each year, but we can fundraise and help that out, which is why we do activities like the chili cook-off. We have the spring celebration. We have book fairs that help with that, winter gifting. So there's a lot of things that we do that help provide the grants to the studios for specific things, going out trips, transportation costs. Some of the things that we've helped with, the massa that's happening in the typhoon and Montessori. My son's in typhoon. The Karen Garden out there, celebration. That is our biggest event of the year, but it really allows us to get out in the community. We're doing it again at Perrin Park, which last year was a phenomenal success. So as long as weather holds out, we're able to get out there and let our learners and our families interact with the communities in ways that make it okay to be who we are in our area, but also expose our beliefs and how our children interact with us and our community and how they learn with the rest of everybody out there. So we want, of course, as much participation with our families as possible, because the more you're in the school, and my daughter started here before we were in this building, it was 13 years ago. So it was a long time, but the more you're here, I think the more endearing it is. And we as a community of parents have really been able to put our children in a position where we get to be really in the mix of it. We get to be in there with them, seeing how they learn and really hands-on with them, which I sincerely appreciate. But going back to PIP, I'm sorry, I rambled. We need PIP volunteers all of the time. We're always asking for help. And so if you ever want to, PIP at shiningminds.com. And we have a Facebook page too. Just Google on Facebook or search Facebook for PIP Community Montessori.
Yeah, and you can always stop
dinners that you do, right? The dinners that you do.
Staff meals today.
Yeah, those take some volunteers too, don't they?
Yes, some coordination, staff appreciation week coming out here.
Yeah. And I'm just like, I want to thank Pip and the family so much. Winter gifting this year was such a huge success. They raised almost $4,000 for the school. And that is, like, to me, such a great example of school support, where the teacher said, we love you and we want you to appreciate us, but we don't need coffee mugs and chocolate and that kind of stuff. So they said, you know what?
Sometimes we need chocolate.
Those things are great too. But they said what we really want is to have these cool things to work with your learners, because that's what we love to do. And so the parents come in and they give this money, and then they get to match it with the needs in the studio, and everybody feels so good about it. And I just think it's really great. So thank you guys for all you do.
And so, of course, we couldn't do it without you, because, our families are a big part of how we are, who we are. So any final thoughts or questions from any of you? Was that helpful?
Yes.
We'll stick around for a while if you have anything else. Thanks so much for coming out tonight. We really appreciate you being here in person, so we're not just talking to the empty stage. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Can you imagine all these different people? And we could get, I know. I was like, okay, I got to do this part in 4 minutes. No, I really didn't even do that much.
Tell me about this preschool thing. What?
I know. Yeah.
What are the